Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Data Analytics Chat, where we explore different topics and challenges that are happening in the ever-evolving data and AI industry. Today, I'm chatting from Asia, so I've got a big journey to discussion to the US. And today we've got an exciting topic, as it's an area where I feel many businesses are struggling at the moment, I guess, due to the scope of the work that is involved. So we'll be looking at distilling insights and creating data products to drive business strategy. So I'm delighted to welcome Florencia Ardissone, who is Head of Customer Insights at JP Morgan Chase. So welcome, Florencia.
Thank you, Ben. Very excited to be here.
Good. So do you want to just give a brief introduction to yourself?
Yes, happy to. Hello, everybody. I'm Florencia. I lead customer insights and Chasement Analytics. As Ben mentioned, I've been at JP Morgan for about 6.5 years. Prior to JP Morgan, I was at McKinsey doing strategy consulting in the New York office. And then I also worked at Google in strategy and ops in Mountain View. And prior to coming here to the US for my MBA in the University of Chicago, I worked in McKinsey in LATAM, in Brazil, Chile, Peru, Colombia, and Argentina. And I'm happy to be here.
So you've done a lot of traveling. So is that something you enjoy doing?
Yes, and I have been very lucky because as a child, I did a lot of far travel with my family. So traveling from Argentina anywhere is far by definition. So I managed to do a lot of family travel to exotic places since I was very young, and I probably have benefited quite a lot from that. And I think on the professional side, having that experience has been quite enriching.
Yeah, actually, I'm on my travels at the moment, sort of work and travel, and I think I spoke to someone actually. They've travelled to Argentina, and he said that's where they've had their best steak.
Probably, if you have the right parrilla, I definitely wouldn't be surprised if you have the best steak there, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Meat eaters definitely head to Argentina then.
You should try it, for sure.
So it's great to have you on here today, and obviously it's, I guess, a huge topic at the minute, especially, I guess, because it covers a lot of bases, doesn't it? There's a lot of issues when you've got talent shortages, you've got data quality issues, you've got the data integration, and I guess even like the ever-evolving technology stacks, because obviously the Gen AI boom's just been a massive change for businesses. So looking forward to sharing your insights on this, Florencia. So let's move into sort of question one. So what do you think what are the key components required to create a robust data infrastructure that supports the delivery of AI-driven data products and solutions?
Yeah, no, I love the question. I think there's many ways to answer that question. I actually had the luxury of talking to Chris Bainey, a chief technology partner in a JP, and he gave me also some talking points and some different ways to think about it. I think about the term robust as implying that the platform is stable and is resilient and can scale and has the right capacity, right? Has the right telemetry and the right data quality. And as you can expect, when we're talking about JP Morgan Chase and we talk about resiliency, it's because we definitely have scale in mind, right? Like, for example, customer insights, I actually have many customer insights products, but one is for small business clients. We actually have 800,000 small business clients that are supported with this solution, and we use 2.4 trillion of transactions to process that experience. So as you can expect, like if you don't have a robust data infrastructure, then like everything falls apart, right? So the idea is, how do you have a support ecosystem that is well equipped and trained to react to issues and also to prevent issues, right? I think that that's kind of the foundation. At the same time, when you think about robust, it can also imply that the platform has to deliver a great client experience. So clients should be able to consume data with ease in a manner that suits them. So some may use APIs, some may use go-to portal. The data share may be available through Snowflake, and then you would be able to apply either within the solutions of the products that you're offering, the AI that can help make your solutions even more compelling, as you were asking. Data quality and data governance also play a key role here, right? Because the idea is that the platform should support the right governance. And for that, you need data lineage, data quality. You need to be an SME in terms of understanding the metadata. When can you trust the data? How do you create systematic alerts? The data is accurate or not accurate. And so from a platform standpoint, you also need to invest in it, right? So in our experience, we were on-prem, right? So we had our data infrastructure that was quite old, Hadoop, and we needed to move that into the cloud. And then kind of going into that direction of thinking about what's the right tooling that supports the right baseline for the right data solutions that you need to build on top of it. And then, of course, adopting the right technologies via AI or whatever else. It's not without a clear ecosystem of an infrastructure that supports also in a dynamic way, multiple tools and products. I think you need to have a decentralized model, and I think you need to think about the level of scale that you are aiming to get in order for you to understand what's the level of investment that you need to put into establishing that baseline. And I think also the other part that is interesting is how do you continue to modernize? So in this journey, in which I mentioned that we transitioned from on-prem to the cloud, we actually also started with glue jobs. Then we moved to adopting in AWS Redshift, and then we transitioned into moving to the Snowflake cloud, and with an API model compared to a Kafka model. And these are all technical terms, but it's part of a journey around understanding which tech stacks were better suited for our type of product needs. So it's not about you adopting those solutions, it's you understanding and having the right SME expertise that would tell you what are the right trade-offs as you consider where to invest in and how to continue to invest so that your solutions continue to be, super responsive. It doesn't take more than half a second for a thing to load. So it's actually quite a lot that gets into play as you answer that question.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot, isn't it? I mean, obviously, storage is always going to keep increasing, isn't it? I mean, also now, I mean, you used before, now you've got the Gen AI boom, you've got a lot more content, data that can be put in a structured way. So again, like you touched on, the scalability is massive. I know, obviously, products like Azure Synapse are out there that can help you with that. And I think I do see a lot more businesses now are going down using the API route for data integration as well. So we're seeing that across a lot of corporate businesses.
Totally. No, of course. That also has been, I think, a little bit because you see it in Europe. I do think that PSD2 has been quite a good proponent of the API approach and the open banking situation.
Yeah, because I think it's like you touched on, it's a journey, isn't it? Really, there could be a new product out, say next week, and it could be a game changer for a company, and you got to learn to adapt, haven't you, and evolve because things do change, as sort of we've seen in the past couple of years.
Totally.
So how do you balance the need for data privacy then with the need to derive actionable insights from the data?
So I love that question because it's sometimes there's not such a big trade-off. We tend to, of course, this is the classic conversation that the luxury that I have in my position where I'm both, building product and also client facing, where of course the clients will come and ask you for the data, right? But the reality is, even if you were to give them the data, they may not have the full capacity to take benefit of the data, right? And so my thinking around data privacy is that we take it with a lot of responsibility, right? Ultimately today, I am a little bit of personally the paranoid, right? Where I'm okay, there is no privacy. Actually, everybody has my data at this point, I'm pretty sure. Thankfully, I don't have anything to hide. But at the same time, as a consumer, and also in the US, consumers tend to have a lot of power. I do believe in the value of privacy. And I do want to try to opt in terms of whenever I actually want my information to be shared or not. And I think there's a lot more that is coming into play, into regulation that is really going into that direction. Of course, Europe is definitely ahead of the US in that direction, but in the US it's also important. The California Act, there's different acts that definitely put that into big play. And in my job, adhering to data privacy has been at the front and center of everything that we do. So in this case, the way it translates to our products is coming up with the right aggregation and the identification methodologies. And that sometimes is something that is evolving because it depends on what the product that you're putting in the market is stable or it's actually granular and it's dynamic. And so understanding how your techniques are actually resilient and you're still distilling the right level of insights, even when you're not level of granularity individual, but your level of granularity may be a group of individuals, a cluster of individuals, a cluster of entities. How do you really invest the right time in establishing what is an insight, right? And what's a meaningful insight, and what is statistically relevant if you think about it from a statistics term. So going back to like, how do you enforce it, right? So thinking about, okay, how do you adhere the right way to data privacy? I think there's a lot of mechanisms. We have established a set of controls that we found to be quite helpful. So it's almost like, how do we delineate the standards of like, the minimum level of aggregations that we can work with in order to kind of render insights in the form of a dashboard to a client, for example. I think that establishing those rules is actually helpful because then as you work with your data scientists and your engineers, they have a clear set of parameters to run the coding and to generate like the trends. But I love the challenge of like, okay, let's play with the boundaries, right? Let's understand what level of granularity still ensures that no customer is identified and no entity is identified, but at the same time, like, would I really want to go at that level of granularity and say something that is meaningful? Like, for example, we have many use cases, right? So think about it like, okay, I want to use my underlying data assets to distill the insights that would tell me how to optimize my staffing. That's one of our use cases. And so for that, I typically like to see for all of my stores, at the time that the customers come in and at time that they transact, and how is that evolving over time. And that I will also like to guide not only my staffing, but my store hours. Reality is that knowing the name or the last name of the customer that comes is very irrelevant for making that strategic business decision. I just need to know the overall, peaks, and it seems like Fridays at 5 p.m. I have 25% more sales than Saturday at 9 a.m. and I want to make sure that that's relatively consistent and therefore allocate the shifts of my personnel in that same direction, and that's different in this other store. So my point is, it's of course granularity is helpful in some ways, but it's not always helpful in the answer for the strategic decision that you need to make company. So I do think that yes, there's a balance. Of course, in some cases you would have the curiosity to get beyond the level of the insight, but I love to challenge even the clients that I talk to in a good way, because to the extent that we can answer the business question that is being asked, I feel like adhering to data privacy is not only the right thing to do, but it's also the desirable thing to do, right? And so there's also two more things that I wanted to add to this answer. We invest quite a lot in trying to figure out what ways we can take as different rules to prevent potential, privacy issues. Thank God we haven't had any. But like, for example, we try to distill from the raw data that we have access, data that we are not going to use, right? So there's data fields that we are not using, right? Like when we get our data feeds, instead of getting the full raw data feeds, there are fields that we don't get on purpose, right? It's like, hey, My team is not going to get access to social security numbers, right? My team is not going to get access to, and you can call it like there's a few fields that are highly sensitive that only getting access to those, even if you were to get hacked and it's nothing related to you, that would be a problem, right? And that would be a bad situation for the firm. So it's almost like also how you think, going back to your question on data infrastructure, how do you create a data infrastructure that can also help you prevent some problems that may result, in a bad position for the firm that nobody really wants, because those are never going to be insights that we're going to share. So there's a ways in which we take further measures, further help us get into a situation where aggregated and clustered insights are not only informative of the strategies, but also we're preventing, a situation that nobody really wants to face by limiting access to certain fields. And another field that I'm going to call attention to is the card number, right? So instead of us getting access to, because we use payments data, so card numbers are also quite sensitive. And so in order for us to not have to deal with that, we basically received access to a tokenized card number. So it's a number that you're not able to decode. It's still unique, therefore I can still use it, as a joint key for important logic that I have put in place, but I'm not gonna able to actually look at it and know what the number is, and they don't have any mechanism for that.
Yeah, no, I think obviously, especially in your industry, bank details are quite sensitive for people. So no, cool. And there's interesting points there. Thank you. So what obviously with what steps would you take to ensure compliance with data privacy regulations then while building like robust solutions?
So I have that luxury and also the burden of having to work with our controls partners, our legal privates, our data privacy partners on a consistent basis, right? So I get challenged quite a lot. So that's why there's a lot of steps that I think need to be in place, right? So we talked about some of them, but I think it's easier to kind of put a framework, right? You need to start by generating the standards, right? So we actually have like a standard operating procedure in which we say, okay, we are not gonna go to see, customer data unless it's aggregated by this metric, and we put like an actual metric. It's like, this is the minimum number of customers we need to see in any metric that is rendered, number, right? Similar with entities. We're not gonna share any data unless there's like a minimum number of entities in that entity set, and none of these entities represents more than X% of the metric rendered. So we really are taking like a numeric and clear delineation of what are the minimum requires for aggregation. So that's the baseline. After we have that baseline, then we also adhere to any contractual considerations that we may have with that data. So that way, we of course adhere to contracts as well. And then okay, now that we establish what is our solution scope, then you have to think about the data environment, right? So it's almost like, okay, so how do you ensure that those rules have been adhered to? Well, that needs to be locked into the logic. And then there's like a maker-checker process that we put into play, where there's going to be a coder that is going to kind of write that logic that validates that we are adhering to our standards. And then there's going to be another coder that's going to be checking that in fact that logic is accurate and is working. And then on top of that, we have like a layer that we add, which is like a set of controls. So on a daily basis, because our products are data products and need to ensure that these products are displaying to customers everything with the right level of aggregation and de-identification. So we establish a set of alerts. So if there is like any issue, like, today we're seeing that the data is off for this particular way, or if we're seeing any issue, then it basically will give us a shout out on a daily basis if there's a problem that we need to get into and troubleshoot. So we kind of have like basically a standard, then like a maker checker process, and then we have like a troubleshoot alerting process on a consistent daily basis. That's the way that we typically do this. I think that the documentation is quite important. So in order for us to deliver products, we need to go through PSEM, so for change management process, and then BIA, new business intake process. So the nice things about it is that sometimes you're thinking about compliance in a strict way, right? We're talking about data privacy, but compliance is a lot broader than that. There's also like, operations. There's also like, are you rendering the features on time? Is the underlying data accurate, or are there problems with the data? Is the data potentially missing? So in terms of what are the checks that we put into place, it's almost like you have a check on first the underlying data level, like is the data integrity, is like, hey, do we have all the data pieces? Then like, is the data updated? Then is the data that is updated, is that accurate? Like, or it seems off, like there's something weird on this data. The values don't make sense. There are thresholds in the values that are quite dissimilar to what we see on the trends. And then on top of that is like, okay, is the logic that we run on the data running? Is the project done? And then does everything seem to be on track? So those 5 things are all kind of automated checks that have different flavors that need to run on a daily basis that help us. Again, does it help for everything? Of course, there's always additional problems that you need to troubleshoot on, but in general, I have seen really great results.
Yeah. I was saying, like, obviously, it's a massive topic. So is there, obviously, you can't have everyone specialising in this. So is it more of like, do you have a lot more like employee like training awareness around these sort of topics? And how do you how would that work?
Yeah, no, that part is key. Yeah, I thank you for asking that. We actually have the whole maker checker process that I told you. So we need to train all of our employees on our standards and procedures, and we need to update trainings. That was for sure on a consistent basis. So there's like a new employee training before if you don't comply with your training, you're not able to get access to the data, right? It's a requirement for your data access. That's to begin with. Then there is ongoing training. Then there's the new technology training, and then there is like kind of different levels, right? So the most senior colleagues can qualify to be checkers of the work. If you're relatively junior, you can only be maker, but you cannot be a checker because the checker needs to be more qualified, for example.
Okay, cool, interesting. So always learning, never stop learning. Then moving on, I mean, how do you prioritize features for your data products, and what criteria would you use to make these?
So it's always about the customer, and it needs to always be about the customers, right? Like if you're delivering products, you need to solve for client needs, and your product features need to be solving for client use cases. So I am very obsessed about the client, and I have that luxury of my team is client facing. So we always have that voice of the customer, which in a bank like JP Morgan, that's a very big luxury because it's always difficult to have that access on an ongoing basis. And I think that we always want to do too much, or at least me, that would be my pet peeve. So it's almost like, okay, how can we distill what's the right level of priority? Because we have a million use cases, right? So for example, on customer insights, we want to improve staffing. We want to improve marketing. We want to, help with store opening hours. We want to help with store location. We want to, help you with deciding investment for your omnichannel strategy. We want to help you with your customer lifetime value, with net new customer acquisition. And so once you start looking at all of these different use cases and you think about the product, then distilling the right product features and making that cohesive, simple, intuitive, and timely, it has a challenge. And also, of course, you have a limited capacity, limited designers, your ability to kind of put the product out there. So there is a lot of test and learn, but there is also a lot of okay, let's establish what are the foundations on the key use cases that we think will be most suited for the majority of clients. That's the other angle, right? Because when we say what clients want, well, do you have a very broad customer persona, or actually are there multiple customer personas, right? In our case, it's very broad, right? We serve, as you're very familiar, a lot of different clients, and we don't want to just have a product that serves e-com clients or retail clients or omnichannel clients. We want to try to be really diverse in terms of industries. We focus on direct to consumer businesses first, but still we really are trying to focus and cater to a lot of different industries and client sizes and client needs. And that's honestly, like, I think one of the questions that continues to be on top of our minds. So we have our daily scrums. So we have an agile methodology in which our tech teams, the front end, the back end, and the product teams meet on a daily basis, and we discuss what's happening on this sprint and what's the progress. And honestly, at the sprint basis, when you have a really efficient team, you try to realize features or improve features on a sprint basis, which typically they take 2 weeks. So it's a rapid process, but it's a very dynamic process. And ideally, the client needs don't change at that speed. So you need to basically try to ensure that you are delivering on your roadmap, but you're staying true to the client feedback if you have that ability of having a product or a portion of the product that is already live that clients are giving you feedback on. So I think I would say that, the prioritization of the features needs to be ongoing, revised, but it needs to be broadly aligned to a set of OKRs that the product has to deliver. So in this case, for me, like, we need to deliver the core product. We define the core product as 4 inside modules. Each of the 4 modules needs to have a set of features. So it's almost like, okay, let's go through that process. Let's build this core, and then let's have all of these cool other features in a backlog in which we continue to prioritize based on client feedback sessions in which we hear from them what they would find most helpful and actionable, because that's the intention of this product in particular.
No, I think also, yes, like I said, you got your end objective. I think it's just not getting sidetracked, because like Gen AI, for example, a lot of companies, they got sidetracked because this new tools come out, think it's going to be a game changer, but obviously now, if you look at it, it's created businesses probably a lot more problems because their data's a mess and they need to get it in order. And also, like, you can provide all this data, but like you said earlier, like, what do we do with it is the next step for a lot of businesses. So yeah, that's good point. So we touched on like integration. What strategies do you use to integrate like multiple data sources effectively, ensuring data quality and consistency?
Well, so that's a very big question. We have embarked on a journey of integrating data sources. I think, to your point, it's been a lot of the journey in which we have used multiple data sources, but within the ecosystem of JP Morgan Chase, right? So now we officially are, in my team, of course, in JP Morgan Chase, because we're using multiple sources for a long time. But in my case, we are now, integrating with third-party data sources live into like live products, and that journey has been a great one, because I think also it relates to your first question on the data infrastructure. So in the past, integrating with third-party data sources was quite difficult. Like, not only because our third-party, vetting system, of course, is quite onerous, but also because of that, like, alignment of like, okay, the data that you bring me is super different. Like, I need to check coverage. How do you bring it in? The process of bringing that in may take forever. It might not be efficient. Like, and I actually need to run a product that is, refreshing on a daily basis. Like, it makes it so that, like, even if I wanted to use other data sources, it would have been like quite impossible to make it happen. And now, as you think about these new ways of integrating, like, for example, with the APIs, we call on an API into an existing product set. We bring in data assets from other sources. We create a clear articulation of the net value that we bring to the table. So I can tell you a live product that we have today. We have a new vendor. So we have a geospatial vendor for our demographic insights that we call on an API based on the geographic zip codes where we see high concentration of customers, and they return to us the kind of the key demographic attributes of those geographic areas. And going through that process of like integrating with this very famous geospatial vendor was not easy, but 10 times easier comparatively to, like, what has been in the past, and knowing that also the a client experience was going to be a worth it to spend the calories on, right? It's like, clients really value this type of data asset. It tells a very cohesive story to what we have, and the integration through an API with a data architecture that supports that integration and still renders the experience to our customer with within our SLA, right? So it takes less than 3 seconds to render the experience, has been a great move forward, because now we actually have a myriad of third-party vendor data sourcing that I'm very excited about. As I think about customer insights in particular, and I told you many of our use cases, right? If we leverage our payments data assets, we answer a lot of questions. But if we get data assets externally, our insights multiply, right? Think about, for example, as I was talking to you, the example of the staffing, right? If you know at the time your customers are purchasing on a consistent basis at the store level, you're in a better position to optimize your staffing on a regular basis. We had a client in retail that had 6 locations. They optimized their staffing, saved 25% on weekly payroll. Okay, but think about that client also wanted to get store traffic data and also employee ID data, of course, de-identify employee ID, the numbers that don't mean anything to me. And then I receive that data into a Snowflake marketplace, which is kind of the same place in which I'm rendering the insights. Then I can optimize the staffing at a whole nother level, or at the employee ID level, at also your ability to understand your conversion of traffic into sales and understanding in which stores you need more traffic, in which stores the issue is the conversion, in which stores your top employees can be moved to different stores. And then we're in a business, of course, in which we're talking about 1,000 stores across the US. So the level of complexity of getting that access to the information on a real time is quite beneficial if you only have all of that displayed into a platform. So I would say that the integration piece, which was your question, I think is most effective when it's API or Snowflake or some sort of technology that makes that relatively lightweight. But ultimately, the biggest driver should always be business value. And then also you had 2 questions around data quality and consistency. So in order for you to get excited, you need to start by doing the testing, right? So all of that cool thing of okay, what happens and how do you get the clients? You first need to check hey, when I get this data, does it make any sense? Do I have the right join keys? Have we aligned on what is the data model? Can we build logic on a consistent basis that if we get the data pattern, it will give us an output that we care about? So all that we're talking about here needs to always start with the customer, the business need, and how would that be beneficial? Because otherwise it's just, an analytic exercise, which I'm happy to be, analytically challenged, but that's not going to be meaningful nor impactful.
Nice. You refer it as a journey, which I like, and it's great you've had successes. But I guess listeners want obviously data, especially around integration, data engineering, that aspect. It is a challenge for businesses. So has it been more obviously referring to the journey? Has it been you've sort of learned on the way, and now has it got? I guess a lot of listeners want to know: has it got easier for you to as you've done the implementations, you just learned and then sort of tailored your approach to get to?
I love that question. Yeah, I think it's been a journey, because at the beginning it almost felt impossible. It almost felt like, when you think about the scope and you're the standards that I talked about from how to do, it felt like it was so impossible to achieve that at the beginning I spent virtually no calories on. Then I did go into that process of testing with some vendors, and we would get offline data assets, and then we would test against what we had, and then nothing matched. And I was okay, yes, this is interesting, but it's not additive. It's completely disconnected to whatever I have. I don't have any join keys. This data may be helpful for a very small subset of client personas. It's also going to be expensive. I also need to go through a process. Why would I invest those calories? So I had that quite a lot. and only even getting to a place in which I can receive a data sample, it's talking about like a month's process. So that was a lot of the experience. Today, I actually do have a lot of third-party vendor reach outs, and I have to admit that probably a lot more than I can even attend to or be interested in. Both are very valid answers. So what I can say is that the firm has done a better job at like also having kind of master level agreements with third-party vendors that are already having a relationship with the firm. And that is also making things more accessible, because it's like, yes, I will still need to go through a crazy process, but a crazy process with somebody that's vetted already is something that I can decide to embark on. It's like, okay, I'll create a separate contract, but it's like a separate contract within like all of these first levels of compliance, privacy, and like, data infrastructure have been met. And I think that has been my particular journey. Can I consider a completely net new vendor? I can, but I just feel like my current experience is like it's a better investment from an ROI standpoint if I start with the list of the clients that already have some sort of relationship to begin with.
Yeah, no, cool. No, it's interesting. No, like I said, I like the journey discussion, because it's ever evolving, isn't it? I think you've got to keep learning. Like, obviously, you can get your way of working, but look, if you're not doing like continuous improvement, your competition's gonna get ahead.
No, that's key. That's 1,000% the case. I think we do a relatively good job at keeping up with understanding what's new. And how to adopt the new technologies, and how to adopt and understand what our competitors are doing, and how do we make our offering differentiated. That has been a good way for me. So like, for example, to your point, given that it's so painful to deal with different vendors, like I established that as part of my vision, and that has helped my talk track. So when I talk to leaders that typically, of course, don't want to invest further calories, because of course these relationships are costly, I think by explaining, articulating very succinctly the opportunities and how much value is unlocked and how much clients would actually benefit from this, I think it's been an easier journey. So it's not only, to your point, like the technical piece and the compliance piece, it's also around that talk track and the influence for our senior stakeholders for us to stay relevant and to invest in this particular integration, so that the products can get more meaningful and get more value to the clients.
Yeah, brilliant. Cool. And then obviously you mentioned times. Yeah, okay. Obviously, if you're in a small business, like you've not got the luxury to probably do as much as a big company. So how do you balance the need for innovation with the necessity of delivering data products, especially when you like addressing new use cases?
So honestly, like sometimes like they can go together, right? Like actually, like for example, I am delivering a new customer insights product for the digital enterprise segment. Right now it's in pilot. I'm delivering this upcoming quarter, and it needs to be timely because I committed to a timeline. But it's still quite innovative, and what we're doing is we're kind of phasing in that level of innovation, right? So to your point at the beginning, it's almost like we're saying, okay, I'm delivering with a core product, and I know like these 3 or 4 features that are gonna be, even more innovative are coming very soon, and I need to figure out which of those features are a deal breaker in terms of like getting people to convert easily into subscribing for the product, so that way like I prioritize correctly which ones I launch first. But at the beginning of the balancing of the innovation, well, I have the luxury of everything that I build is innovative, because we are not, even though I work in a bank, I'm not in the business of delivering lending or like credit or the classic financial services assets. I'm actually creating new data solutions that are addressing new use cases, and that is in itself a creative process. I don't have like somebody that stipulates that this is the product and like you need to build it. It's more like I want to build it, and I'm convincing people that this is relevant, and like I'm like figuring out what the use cases clients can benefit from, and I'm articulating that like that facilitation of solving for business needs to the clients and to our leaders, and that in itself is an innovative experience. And I'm quite like, I know that I'm in a very luxury position, and that's probably the reason why I invested so much time in making this happen, is because I'm very passionate about the creative process. I kind of really like that experience of, look, by itself, my delivery of a product is an innovative product, but then how do I reinvent myself, and how do I keep it up, and how do I, on a timely manner, continuously deliver something that can stay at the top of the game with a process of delivery that is not as fast. We are a bank, we have a lot of process, so it's almost like a tension in which you have a small startup that runs very efficiently in a giant organization that has really clear and very, of course, robust and well established guidelines, and you need to navigate that situation. And yes, some things may get delayed, and therefore and there's code freezes, and there's a lot of things that push timelines. So you need to be very meticulous in terms of how do you define what's core, what's truly innovative from a core standpoint, and what's truly innovative after what's defined as core, and how can that establish literally your biggest goal, which is delivering on the best product that the clients want and that will sell. So because you have that clarity on what's the objective, then that prioritization gets a little bit easier, and hopefully from a trade-off standpoint, some of that still has a lot of flavor of innovation in it.
Yeah, cool. So I guess a lot of regular reviews then is carried out with your work.
But at the same time, like, you also need to drive consistency. So the regular reviews, you need to also control the audience, like establish the right OKRs, showcase like that progress, like, acknowledge the process, acknowledge the milestones. And so the level of pivoting is also something that you need to be fine-tuning for sure.
Yeah, cool. And then obviously, stakeholders want a return, don't they? It's just, look, especially bank, you want to keep generating more money. So, what effective strategies for like monetizing data then do you use?
So honestly, like, I love that question because I don't necessarily have like the right answer, but I think one thing that I want to believe that we try to do, and I believe it because I try to do it, is that the way that we are thinking about monetization is in line with the value, right? So we were talking about, okay, how can I build a product that will help the client solve for real business needs? And, and how do I understand that my data assets are, the right raw materials to supporting with the right manipulation the answer for these very critical business questions. And I think that has been the best way of thinking about monetization. It's like, to the extent that I can have a clear understanding of how much value can I unlock for my customers, then it's easier for me to understand how much value can I, charge for this solution. Because if I am delivering on something that is adjacent, or if I'm delivering on something that is interesting and it's cute, and it can help people feel comfortable with their decisions, but that's it, well, my ability to monetize is going to be quite limited. And so I need to figure out, how do I have like a big pool of potential ways in which my product can be used to unlock business value, quantify that business value, and then articulate that the cost is significantly lower, right? So therefore, I can articulate to my clients that the ROI of investing in subscribing to the solution is worth it. And they need to validate that for me, right? And so it's I wouldn't say it's like the best strategy and a simple strategy. I think, of course, as you can expect, this is conceptual. So what else do you need to do? Well, you need to, have a lot of partnership with your sales teams. The front line needs to actually inform a lot of what you're trying to do. The messaging needs to be clear. The messaging needs to be targeted to the customer personas. Your sales teams needs to be trained. You need to provide the training material for the sales teams, for the customer support. You need to be providing demos to the clients. The client needs to actually adopt the solution, start engaging with the solution. You need to think about building a gamification in your product so that you encourage that recurring usage of the tool that will help clients actually feel more comfortable with the usage, so they can unlock then more ways into benefit from the experience. Then they can, encourage that feedback, have feedback sessions in order for you to really understand ways in which this product can actually generate even more value to them. So then you can, be in a better position to be priced. And of course, there's the other part, which is like, okay, what are the other solutions in the market? How much are those charged? How are you aligning and differentiating from those solutions? What is your pricing compared to that pricing? And how do you continuously have that view, And I think that's why, like, the effective part of it, I think it's not one straight recipe, but it needs to be quite, an eyes open strategy and ears open strategy, in which you need to, stay with the right pulse. Because the other thing that you don't want to do, even though clients are always like us, like everybody would want a discount, right? Everybody would want the cheapest thing or the free thing. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's no value to it. And so it's almost like, what's the right balance and trade-off around, how to monetize effectively, how to unlock the value for the customers, and sustain that level of creativity and innovation and investment in the product that is required in order for the product to actually continue to be exciting for clients.
Yeah, no, I love that you said value, because I think, and to understand value, you need the basic, like the soft skills, the listening skills, because there's no. I think a lot of businesses they'll offer these fantastic like solutions, but if it's of like no benefit to your company, it's like adding no value, and then end day you've not listened to their needs. And I think it's just, if you listen to someone what they need, and then you can come up with the right solution, or whether your solution is perfect for them. So I think value is massive for your customers, because if you keep offering them, if you make them impact, they're going to keep coming back to you at the end of the day. Like, they're going to keep wanting to use you because you've actually done a proper service and listened to them.
1,000%. And also one thing, Ben, is that a lot of it can be intangible as well, right? So we are working a lot in these digital solutions, but we know that we have a lot of expertise. It's been a while. Like I told you about my experience, I feel like I'm doing analytics for quite a while. And a lot of the times the clients want to feel the level of comfort. So it's almost like, okay, I have the tool, I understand the data, this is really awesome, but I actually also want to talk to an expert and want to feel confident, and it's almost like, okay, yes, now it resonates more. Like I actually wanted to also have that level of exchange in which, like, I'm talking to a human person. Sometimes that adds as well. Of course, you won't be able to scale that from a monetization standpoint, but it's helpful for you to understand that, like, as humans, and I know it's like a little bit of a tangent answer, but I think it's important. I've been reading a lot of behavioral economics. I am an economist and I really love behavioral economics. And clearly humans are not rational, right? So as you're thinking about monetizing, it's not only about, like, the ROI, because clients and people are not rational. And so there's also the element of the qualitative. And it's almost like, okay, how do you understand how people make decisions, and what are the ways in which you can influence that or help clients get more comfortable in making the decisions? And of course, data and data solutions are a part of it, but it's not the only part of it. So that's why, as we are building these solutions, we're also thinking a lot about how do you also articulate the value of the expertise that this team has, not just the tech infrastructure and the data solution, but also the level of expertise. How can we also potentially, like, be somewhat specialized and in a project basis available to have a discussion around specific business needs, and how do we can create something that is adjacent to the product, but maybe like, a special data extract with a set of analytics that will help you address that question and have an exchange that clients really value a lot.
Yeah. So I guess we touched a bit on it, but I mean, how would you identify and create data products that provide this value to your customers then?
Honestly, it's whatever the customers like, right? Ultimately, like, at the end of the day, is how they define it. Well, like, the customer is always right. So whatever they value will be what is right. In my case, as I try to deliver products that they value, I think because my purview is try to get to a lot of client personas at the same time, it's almost like, how do I create a product that with the minimum number of modules I can address the maximum number of use cases? Therefore, it's gonna be very likely that I'm gonna have at least like 5 or 6 use cases that are gonna be pertinent to any given client, even though for the core clients there may be 30, so it's almost like, for me, the significant value would be like basically how many use cases and how many ways am I addressing client needs with the data solutions that I'm bringing to the table, and how easy it is for them to get to the answers. So a lot of the investment that we also put in place, and I didn't talk about this, but I actually think it has been quite helpful, is we distill those insights and we spell those out. So it's not just about showing you a chart that shows you, hey, this is where your customers concentrate geographically and how far they live from your store. And it's also to tell you like, hey, these are the 5 stores in which, you have the highest value for proximity. And we're seeing that zip codes around your area that are very close to your store are not yet, getting the same share of wallet from those customers that could be purchasing with you. So maybe those are the zip codes you want to do marketing on. So like actually investing the calories on like giving you potential hints into how you can distill these data assets into actionable business recommendations. You can decide to do it or not. We of course will caveat it because we're not the wizards of the world, but that level of understanding of like, not only I'm trying to kind of give you the most options, but also I'm really making it simple. Like, nobody has time, nobody wants to invest in more products. They actually want to, have cool ideas and nudges in terms of how to think about the trends that they're observing and the ways that they incorporate that into their business to make more value. That's been basically one good tool that we have in our toolkit.
Yeah, okay, it's just a bit like when you go to a restaurant and if you've got a restaurant that's got like 100 options, if you don't, I'll hate it because it's like, where do I choose? If you've got
that's decision overload. It's actually net negative. You deciding on 100 options is actually more exhausting. You can't. You're gonna make a worse decision if you only have 3 than if you only have 3 options. That's statistically relevant what I'm telling you.
Yeah, I must be hungry. Think of that. But okay, so how do you ensure that insights derived from your data products align with your overall business strategy?
Well, first, I think you need to articulate very clearly your business strategy, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the alignment is kind of a cool thing, right? To think about, okay, what am I trying to do? And sometimes clients are trying to do too many things at once, right? Because like, for example, if you want to grow your client base and you also want to grow your loyalty, you probably need to, at the same time, pursue 2 different marketing strategies, and they need to be not inconsistent, because you don't want to have a situation, which this is a great example of something that, of course, some companies have done, right? Typically, when you want to win new customers, you offer discounts, right? And typically, when you to get customers come back, the way that you offer the promotions needs to be different, because the offers applied to new customers tend to be more, I would say, more aggressive than the offers that apply to existing customers to win back. It's just also from an ROI standpoint. But if you don't establish the differences and you don't stipulate, this offer is only available for new customers, that seems very basic at this point, but it's in some cases it's not. A lot of the time, instead of getting new customers, what you're achieving is that your existing customers are paying less. So like, instead of getting a cool ROI for a net new customer acquisition, you're getting a more or less ROI for customers that in the majority of cases are now benefiting from lower prices, but they were already loyal to you. And this is like, helpful to think about as you're establishing as a business, what are the key elements of your business strategy. Like another example that I have on that disconnect, we had a client that was very interested in understanding their new store location strategy, definitely wanted to grow, open a lot of new locations. And what was happening is that they were not clear if the new locations were bringing net new customers or actually making driving a lot of cannibalization and customers actually switching from location to location, probably from not the best optimized location footprint strategy. And so in terms of how do I ensure that my insights from our data products are aligned with the overall business strategy, I think you need to talk to clients and understand what insights that I can derive are most interesting in terms of the business strategies those clients need to put forth. And if there's no match, there's going to be a problem, right? If the insights that I can derive are not answering my clients' needs, then they're not going to find my product relevant, right? And so in some cases, what I can do is like I establish high-level trends in which I know that this is always going to be relevant at the macro level. And then when we talk about the micro level, these are the kind of client needs that I'm solving for. And if the client needs to go beyond that, and that's a little bit what we were talking about, in this case, the store cannibalization as an example, it's very specific. It's like these stores, how do they cannibalize? What about these customers? So I can have a conversation with that client and address that particular thing as a special project. And my product itself is never going to be so niche to address every client need. So it's almost like establishing the guidelines in terms of like, okay, what are the overall broader questions that I can really answer? And what are the questions that I purposely understand are not going to be part of it? But client, if that is something that you're super excited about, let's discuss it. Let's have a live discussion. It's not going to be a digital solution available to you only. It's a digital solution plus a subscription to special projects. That's an elite package. Do you want to subscribe to that? We can also cover that. So that's a way that you have to answer to those business strategy needs that you ask, but it's not the only way. Ultimately, it starts with the customer and like you understanding what they care about. It needs to be something constant.
So obviously, to keep it with the business strategy, I guess you need a strong leadership because you can get pulled all over the shop. Keep directed, like there's so much you can be doing. Like there's so much different parts of a business. So obviously, you need, I guess, have your core objective and make sure you've got the strong leaders that actually keep you on task because you can easily get sidetracked. I've obviously seen many.
Totally. Also, if you talk always to clients that are niche clients, instead of like fully understanding your full scope of clients, you may be optimizing and creating data features that are very not scalable, right? It's like, oh yes, this was only helpful for clients in fuel and C stores, but like it doesn't apply to grocery stores, to restaurants, it doesn't apply to retailers. Then I invested like a whole set of features that are so narrow in scope that nobody's gonna like them. A very small set of customers will benefit. It's really important to think about that in the way that we build the products. It's like really, to what extent is this really a feature that is extensible, or is it an example?
Yeah, definitely. And then I guess to finish on the last question, can you provide examples of how data-driven insights influence strategic decisions?
Of course, and I have the luxury of having clients that gave me like the consent to share some of the stories. I actually worked, for example, with Pret a Manger, and we helped them validate their store expansion strategy. So they were very interested in understanding where to expand in the US. They have a very big presence in New York, but they basically don't have much presence outside of the New York area. And we help them identify the geographic areas to go right after based on, their client personas and the concentration of those client personas in the different areas of the US. And the US president gave us the testimonial that we helped validate their strategy. And it was like a really successful experience. Imagine like as you're investing in growing the US, your footprint, it's quite exciting to be able to do that. We also help different clients with different strategies. So Moscot is an eyewear luxury brand in the US, in New York in particular, but in the US, but like in the East Coast, it has a big presence. And they wanted to really understand their customer personas, the new loyalty patterns in order to drive higher share of wallet of their customers. It was quite helpful to help them articulate like their client value strategy to win customer lifetime value, and it's been like really nice to work with them. We have like very different use cases. For example, with EasyCater, we help them think about their market share evolution and their positioning in the market. They gave us a little bit of feedback around how our data was a lot more accurate and helpful than any of the other vendors they work with. I think in general, we have a multiplicity of use cases, and the level of influence can be quite high. We actually helped a cosmetics company and understand that they had an opportunity to increase their prices because their average ticket was significantly lower than their peers, and their customer personas were of relative affluence, and they actually validated some of their interest in testing into potentially some higher margin items thanks to these, data strategies. Those are simple examples, but in general, I think we take a lot of work in trying to understand what are the opportunities. Sometimes we can help with making the loyalty programs more robust. Sometimes we can help with investments in particular channels, like the digital channel. And I think store location is definitely one kind of repeated use case. Store cannibalization is also quite another one. And I am quite passionate about kind of distilling with the data, the strategic business decisions the clients want. But I think I would add one more thing, which is all of this is only possible when you talk to the right customer persona, which means that, a JPM typically, and I see it on payments, it's not going to be the payments lead of the client side that can make this level of decisions, right? So if you're talking about marketing budget, you need to talk to the CMO. You're talking about, channel investments, you need to talk to the CFO. If you're talking about location strategy, then you can talk to the CFO, but maybe you need to talk to the head of real estate. If you're talking about client loyalty, you need to talk to the head of customer insight. So we also have a little bit of all of these business insights are quite powerful because this is, actual data. This is not inferring what happened. This is really looking at purchasing behavior. But you also need to, at the same time, have on the other side a decision maker. You need to talk to a client that actually is a decision maker and then can put in play that business strategy so that then they can derive the impact that everybody is hoping for.
Yeah, I think it's like you mentioned, it's important to obviously you're gonna have a decision maker no matter what, but you want to speak to the expert in whatever topic it is, because end day you're just gonna get some bullshit answer. That's not bullshit, but you're not gonna get a precise answer. You want the actual knowledge, because it's going to obviously be more again touching on value. It's more of a value add, isn't it? If you're going to the right, I actually need to speak to my colleague on this topic, or you need to speak to some other colleague. It's a bit more of a value add than sort of someone having a guess at an answer. You want that actual intel that's going to be beneficial for your customer.
Yeah, and also because me as a data owner, data leader, and building on all of these insights, you're hoping for is that client do take the action. And so unless you're talking to the person at the client that is empowered to take that action, then it's unlikely that they will take the action.
Yeah, cool. And also, some amazing examples. I guess obviously it makes work worthwhile if you're making impact to other companies like Prep. And was it Mascot, the other one?
A Mascot?
Was it the other company?
Mascot. Mascot was
Mascot,
an A-word.
okay.
Yeah. We have a bunch of companies that gave us testimonials. Tory Burch, Mascot, Pret a Manger, City Trends, EasyCater. Yeah, we've been lucky that clients are getting more comfortable in sharing the fact that insights can be powerful for them in different ways. And there's a lot more clients that I'm not mentioning because we only mention clients when they gave us a disclosure. But the reality is that these conversations are quite refreshing, to your point. You always want to have a conversation when you're trying to help and the clients are open to listening and open to getting your perspective. I'm a consultant, as I told you, I've been at McKinsey for 5.5 years across the world, in LATAM, in US, in Europe. And it is nice to provide that guidance when you have that context of actually, there is an interest and there is a value, and then the clients then tell you actually this was quite helpful and we made this type of decision and it actually gave us, an edge.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, obviously, you work to get a wage, but also then if you got that like internal praise, you make an impact. It's that, yeah, I'm actually doing something good. That like you give yourself a pat on the back.
I mean, honestly,
it's
this
that feeling,
particular
isn't it?
one is super mission driven. Like the
Yeah.
value of my product is if it gives value to the customer.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the incentives are very aligned. That's I think very important. Like my incentives are literally aligned for the client to actually derive value from it.
Yeah, because then I think for me, like say staffing, if I put someone in a job, place someone, and then they make impact, that's obviously I've done a good job, and you get that extra feeling like you've done a good job. And similar, I think I don't know. I think most people are the same now. Obviously, you want to earn money to live, etc. You get your bonuses, things like that, commission, whatever. But then also you get the things that make impact. I think they're also they're massive for individuals.
Yes, and in particular, we were talking about the innovation piece. I was lucky because I ideated these products. I tested for the first time these products. I got the funding for these products. I released these products to millions of clients. I see the result, and I continue to invest in that. And I think that that's a very unique place to be in. And so, yeah, I would agree with you. I think on top of it, as you can expect, my team is a very proactive, mission-driven, excited, tech-oriented, data geeky, and it's super nice. Like we actually enjoy what we do. I like coming to the office because of my team, and I feel very grateful for that. Because to your point, life is not easy. In fact, today, another tough day. These past 4 weeks, they have been very tough for my family. We had like 4 deaths in 4 weeks. Wow. And there's like a lot going on. And no, I'm sorry, but it's important sometimes to also kind of, to your point, like, of course life is important. Of course, the job is important, and it's never going to be as important as your life. But to the extent that you can derive meaning for what you do and actually enjoy what you do, everything is much better. So I have that luxury position, and I try to the extent that I can to generate that same environment for the team.
Yeah, and I think you touched on, obviously, in life, you're going to go through, you're going to have good times, like, let's say, you're delivering your projects to your customers, and you're going to have bad times, obviously. Sorry to hear about your family members. I think it's sink or swim mentality you got to have, because if you get bogged down in, obviously, you got to have be sad, extra, but you got to just get through it, because it's unfortunately, it's part of life. And I think if you get bogged down in suffering, you're just not going to get nowhere. So you need to, I guess, like I said, have these positive things in life where you achieve, you get through things.
You always need to recognize the positive things, because life will also give you the other things, and that's a fact.
Cool. Well, thanks for making time for me, obviously, and obviously for the situation. It's been great having you on the episode. Hope you've enjoyed it, and it's been some really valuable insights shared.
Thank you, man. Super nice to meet you. Super grateful for your reach out. Really hope that we get some listeners and some feedback. By the way, any feedback, please, even negative, I'm happy to receive it. I'm sure that I can do better, but super appreciative.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you.
Nice to see you.